be doing anything else out there for a while, except mowing. So the who. The who is interesting because I wanted to kind of piece these out, and I just named them pods, if you want to call it that. So I have the Arlington. We're going to kind of go through these and what this could look like. It could be built by the town to rent, sell under deed restrictions. Employees can use the unit during the time of employment in those positions, and then sell back at resignation, retirement, and termination. So these would be deed restricted for town employees. They could also be rented for town employees as well. The three that just found themselves without a rental, that could have been managed fairly easily. Well, maybe not easily, but at least with some provision that they would have had housing. The billings is that offer a down payment assistance and use a third-party company to administer the program to protect the capital outlay. That could be for you could decide that it's anybody. You could decide that it's for employees that work for the town. You could decide it's employees that work for some organization that's actually inside the town limits. Or it could be, maybe Mercy or Fort Lewis College or some other organization that you have a third party assist in the down payment assistance. The Charleston is transitional to allow the new area employees moving into the community to get settled, to find a place on their own. So maybe our assistant public works director, if that person is coming into town, it's transitional housing. You have 6 to 12 months to find more permanent housing. That could be that kind of transitional housing to actually entice, I should say, qualified, experienced employees into town versus it would be better then when we're competing with other small communities in the area, say, guess what? We have housing to get you started, or your family to get started and move here. As if you have children in school, if we have to hire somebody in February and they can't move a family until school's out, this would also give some time for transition for other purposes that their family may need at the time as well. The DUI is to restrict to town employees and provide a purchase equity program, which the town will pay 10% of the purchase price up to $300,000. And the way this works is that, let's say the town participates $30,000 and the employee is at $270,000. And then at some point when the house appreciates or the townhome appreciates, the town would receive that same 10% equity increase in that property, and so would the employee or whoever it was deed restricted to as well. And in this case, there would be no, they wouldn't have to work for the town. If they went to work for the town and then went to work for the school district, they would not lose that housing because town's employment. They would have the ability to keep that home, and of course the town would basically be a partner in that appreciation of that townhome at a later date.
So is that 10%, that doesn't go with the value of the property, that's just they would pay back the original 10% that they borrowed in essence?
That 10% is basically the 10%, either the town, let's say the home sells for $400,000 at a later date. Then the town now has got a $40,000 back to it because we were 10% participating in that.
So it's 10% upon sale.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, any improvements done by the employee or the resident themselves would have to be figured into any kind of deed restriction, how that would work. Town employees or other kind of a lottery, get lottery picks when there is deed restricted for sale units offered by the town to the public employees. So this would be a lottery. There would be no deed restrictions. In other words, it's a home that comes up on the market. The town basically becomes we are the acquisition. We acquire it back and we put it back on the market for what it appraised at. So that could be another option, and I'm basically calling that the Essex. And by the way, these are names of commissioned naval ships. So I'm not picking on anybody or naming anybody's child or anything else.
Dewey.
The Freedom, the town seeks proposals for qualified builders who will have the capacity and expertise to develop a single-family residential workforce housing. The selected firm will be responsible for financing plan for development. Basically, I have A, working closely with the town to build townhomes. B, preparing the interior and exterior architectural plans. C, processing all necessary applications. D, construction and construction management of the build. Pagosa Springs actually had an RFQ out there not too long ago, and they had no submittals.
Really?
So, this may be easier if we actually own the lots. I don't know, but
Yeah, I feel like it'll be a different story. It would be a different story
it
here.
could be a different story here. But anyway, it's a option under Freedom. Halsey is to deed restrict the property and transfer in the open market with water and sewer taps attached is a release of a beneficiary covenant. So actually in Fox Farm, they actually have this beneficiary use covenant. So in other words, the homeowner made a covenant with the town that they would get water and sewer taps at no cost if they lived in the resident for 10 years. They did not make that 10 years, and it was that covenant with the town that they had to pay the town back when they sold the townhome that they were in. So the town received the amount of, at that time, the water and sewer tap was $10,334. So the Halsey basically provides, a little bit of incentive, reduces the price, the overall cost of the townhome. But if they are not going to be long-term residents in the town, then that money would basically come back to the town. And we did get the check for that beneficiary covenant. The Jackson, we could transfer to Habitat for Humanity. They provide housing 30 to 80% AMI, and they keep the homes deed restricted. And I would like to state that Fox Farm is right in the neighborhood of Mesa Meadows, not too far from Clover Meadow 7, and actually those homes are going fairly expensive in Mesa Meadows. South Mesa Drive is a little bit older resident, but even those homes are selling. So selling what they're asking is from what I can tell. The Manchester, it could be just a free market. It could be, the infrastructure is put in. The cost of actually putting that infrastructure in is what you're selling the lot for. So the Manchester could be one of those ideas of, here's a free market townhome, and it would not be deed restricted. The Oakland could provide rentals for businesses located within the town limits. So whether it's the library or the Bayfield School District or tequilas or the Merc. Maybe they have an employee that's looked to rent, and that would be an open rental. Keep in mind that it takes some management of rentals, but maybe you decide that you're offering this to a business in town. You have to manage that rental, and you take some liability in that rental. If you are good enough to hire that person, maybe you're good enough to rent to that person as well. So, The Portland is provide all infrastructure, including water and sewer taps at no cost with a specific term of residency for workforce employed within town limits. So actually, it would just be not deed restricted, but you're just providing everything it takes to get the infrastructure in, and basically just building the townhome would be at the cost of the employee that works for the town. The Somerset is sell deed restricted units to the school district at cost. So whether you actually just sell the property that has the infrastructure installed, or actually build the townhomes and sell it to the school district, you know, it's yours. You figure it's now within your property. If you ever sell it out of the school district, maybe that's deed restricted, that has to come back to the town, or first right of refusal of some sort for the town. The Tripoli would sell a deed restricted to an entity that can manage the units for local employees. So just another, it could be employees that are local. You could think of the Bayfield area. Maybe they work, you know, up at Vallecito. Maybe they work for the tribe. Maybe they work, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things when you think the local. What will local be? Is local as far as Mercy, or is local as far as San Juan Basin Public Health? I mean, you know, those all those options that you figure out what local is going to be. Wichita, hire a firm to do a study establishing impact fees to offset the demand for affordable housing created by new developments. And I know that home builders are already whining about, you know, the price of a building permit, the price of water tap, the sewer tap, you know, the on and on and on. Impact fees, you do have to have a study if you decide to do that. But you could decide to charge, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 or some amount that starts to collect money to do maybe a couple townhomes if you decide to do that. But I'm just throwing that out. The two that I didn't have room on here for is you could decide to develop a child care unit. Maybe the child care provider is certified of some sort, and they actually are, it's constructed to actually provide child care. And when that child care provider no longer provides child care for whatever, you know, you decide that that's deed restricted, that we will look for another person that's looking for a home to provide child care. So I have a line in there for your idea. I'm not saying this is everything. I'm saying that these are options between the city and county managers, and between some of the other information that I've had over the years, some of the other networks that I've and I have people trying to join here. You know, these are just as close as I could get to kind of a Bayfield type of development.
I mean, it covers the entire
Yeah.
spectrum of, I feel like it's a bit of a contractual nightmare. What does our attorney think? But,
Is this something where we can pick and choose a couple of these to do?
Yes.
They're just ideas. Because I was like,
This
who
is-
is managing this?
Not me.
I would not want to.
No, I mean, yeah, this is basically every scenario.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause-
And
wow.
each one of these is going to have a different option for financing as well.
Or
So
it could be
it's-
all, you decide one of these options is for all 30.
Okay, thank you. I like hearing that too, because I was kind of like, which one do I like the best? And can we just go with one?
I
Yeah,
know
or we
there's
can mix
some
and
that's
match,
like,
but-
okay, I like to give, you know, some affordable housing to the town, but man, I want to give some affordable housing to the school district. And I want to give some affordable housing to,
And I would
you know,
like to
this
see
thing
a little
or-
bit of the free market. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot here.
I don't want to do the free market at all.
No?
Nope.
Well, that's not why we bought this.
Exactly, if we were gonna do that,
If we were
Just
gonna
do
leave
one,
the
see
free
what
market,
happens.
we would have left it out there. Let
Right.
somebody else deal with it.
And I
it was
think-
already on the free market before this.
For a long time.
Yes.
I mean, are we seeing enough demand in all of the paperwork that's provided that the people who buy these homes could actually be people, or not buy, who participate in this, they could actually be people who are working in Bayfield or for businesses in Bayfield? Like, 'cause when you're saying, yes, and they could work for Mercy or San Juan Basin,
Yep.
or, I'm like, yes, and we're in the town of Bayfield, so I'd like to support the people who live and work in the town if possible. And then if there's not a
The second option, yeah.
population who would like that, then maybe it's housing for those who are working in other areas.
Well, when you think about the broader context of community, things like the hospital are part of our community, so people who work there need a place to live, so by extension, that's here.
not
Same
true.
thing with people who work for the highway department or work for the county. So there's a lot of different people that have need. And sadly, much of the need is for public employees. And our revenue stream is not keeping up with the wage scale that's needed to meet the cost of the homes that people are wanting to live in. And so that's why we're in this business here.
It's one of the factors. And then another thing, that we learned today, looking, at this study that we'd gotten that, what's her name, Abby had created, that we're 2 times under our inventory. Like we have 2 times less inventory than we actually need, and that was for Bayfield, Durango, and they didn't want to skew it with Ignacio, but it was Bayfield, Durango, and
Yep.
around county. So yeah, there is a need. There is a actual proven. They've done studies that they need housing options of all that Katie just explained. And again, we don't have to provide all of them.
No.
Durango's going to provide some of them. Ignacio's got some great options that they're working on right now that we were talking with Mark Garcia about. We all have these options, and like David said, it's, this larger community, so we're providing something that maybe Durango can't provide, and vice versa.
When we very first started thinking about this, what really attracted me to this idea of doing this was to fill the need for not our, because I feel like there's all kinds of programs that they do for really, really low income. And then I feel like there's people out there that they have the money to afford their houses. They can go buy a house, no problem. They've got that money. But there's this little niche of people who are your average, they've got, family of 2.5, 2 adults living in the house, and maybe sometimes even 1 adult living in the house. And that is that group of people, to me, that we really need that 30 houses to go for. To me, that's like the most important thing, because I'm not really interested in doing Habitat for Humanity type of a program. It's like those are already established. Let's find some ground where those people that they just don't quite make that level to get into a home. Let's get those people into homes and not have to fight it.
There is a demonstrated need for that as well.
Exactly.
And are you looking at deed restricting? I mean, deed restricting is the only way to keep them affordable, or they end up back on the free market.
Right, and that I never thought anything other than deed restricting because of that reason. Because if you don't deed restrict it, they're just gonna turn and burn them. And when
Yep.
they turn and burn them,
It's out of hand.
yeah,
It's not,
it doesn't suit the purpose of what we thought we were trying to do here.
that undermines community.
That as well. Yep.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but when you have a deed restriction and it's 7 to 10 years out, or some 5 to 10 years out, whatever we decide it's gonna be, that person will live in that property long enough that it doesn't affect the values of the market as much. If you have them where they turn and burn, it does affect the value of the market.
Sure.
I like the ownership requirement on the homes, so that they're not necessarily a rental aside from homes that we might own for that process, or that, for the need for those people that are in transition. That could be a place where I could see the need for a rental in this type of development. But aside from that, I would prefer to see that most of it is owned by the person that's inhabiting, or persons inhabiting
I
the
agree.
dwelling. Because sense of ownership, having ownership, makes for a better community in my mind. You know, and you see that over in Foxmart.
Yeah, it's always that way. I mean, like, if you look at how, like, when they do mortgages on condominiums, a lot of times they want to have over 50% ownership because it will actually increase the community of the building. It'll keep the upkeep of it. There's pride of ownership in those buildings when you have that. And so the mortgage companies, they want that pride of ownership for the people in condominium associations, so that, you know, they know that the value of the property that they're lending against is going to be maintained rather than going down. So I would agree with that. I mean, if we are going to do some sort of rental, I don't want very many of them, and I really don't think that we want to be the landlords as a town, if that makes sense.
That
It
goes
would-
back to that enterprise
Yes.
business. Because there
somebody
again,
else
I
to
mean, that,
run it,
you
not
know, in
us.
my mind, if we had an enterprise fund that was doing oversight within that enterprise, those parcels that were being rented by the town, or by the ownership of the town, would be managed by that enterprise fund.
Have we reached out to Kevin or had any talk with the school district on kind of need or desire to be?
No, we have not. I wanted to find out where this
we-
board was and what they wanted to do. I'm kind of hearing Tripoli is the sell deed restricted to an entity, or to property owners, I guess, that can, but we need to find somebody that can manage the units in the AMI. Homes Fund does that. We do have other entities that will do that. Who's going to build it is a story probably for a later date. But
I'd add the fire district too, to the, as well as school
Absolutely.
district.
yeah.
And anybody else
So, I-
in a service capacity.
right.
Public service capacity that, you know, would be interested in this.
Yeah. So my husband works for oil and gas. He worked for BP, and now the company is sold to an overseas business, so they have no office buildings. So he doesn't belong to anywhere in Durango, and I bet there's a lot of people in that position too, especially now that the pandemic happened and people are like, we don't need our office buildings anymore. So I don't know how we would address those kinds of people. I'm like, that's really hard.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I'm like, that's so hard.
Point, because the concept of where do workers work and live has changed. My own company said you don't have to go back to work.
Yeah.
You can stay, but it seems to me that if you're willing to, I mean, you have to work.
what are we paying you for?
Yeah. Like he works out of his truck now. So
So, I mean, I think that, you know, you can look at what we used to do in the resort areas. I worked in Breckenridge, County, where this has been a problem for 40 years. And we just looked for people that were employed or would live in the unit, and were employed. We didn't really ask in the county necessarily, but why would you live in Bayfield and work in Nashville? Or is that a problem? If they live here and their kids are here and they're contributing their salary to your economy, maybe that's okay. but those are things you have to think about.
Mhm.
And you wanna make sure they're employed. It would be tough to say only employed in Bayfield.
Right,
Yeah, I
right.
think the reason like we kind of, our brains want to go towards that is because we're trying to support our local businesses as well to make sure that they continue to thrive. So, you know, to me, it's like, yeah, we want to ask, you know, our public services and our schools and, you know, maybe allocate a certain percentage of these lots towards, you know, their needs so that we make sure that they don't go away. Because, you know, we want to be able to have enough police officers, and we want to be able to have enough fire department, firemen and women.
Yeah, and the turnover, I know there's teachers that had to leave the
Yeah.
district. They just cannot.
We don't want to lose
We
all
can
of our
just broaden
teachers.
that.
We want to have good teachers, and, you know, getting good teachers, that could be a big draw in to bring, especially because teachers make such low wages, but that could be a big draw to bring more and better teachers here, which, you know, that helps our children in our community as well. So, I mean, I think that's the reason why we try to think, okay, let's think more Bayfield first. I hate to say it, but, you know, I want to think of Bayfield first. I want our children in this community to have good teachers, and I want us to be safe, and I want us, you know, if we have a big fire breakout, I want to make sure that, you know, we've got the staff in those public entities that can help us, you know, that help our community thrive.
I did hear
So,
Forest Service too from some.
Yeah,
but-
Yeah,
and
Forest
maybe
Service as well.
We can pick and choose and reserve some.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like just
I think
expand that
that's-
model. That
And then if they're not filled up, you go.
Well,
out.
yeah, that's what I was
Right.
gonna
Lottery
say. Can
type
we
model.
try to go that route first? And if there's not that much of a demand from that sector, then we can
we
maybe
can.
course correct and go another way.
I think we can
Yeah.
always do that.
I think you just have a priority. The first priority is town employees, second priority is
Yeah.
decide it's a school district, second is a fire district. I mean, and you just go down the road and, until, you know, maybe it is somebody at, you know, at the True Value that just needs a house, so.
And I have no doubt we're probably gonna have to draw lots on it anyways. I think there's
I
gonna
agree
be
with you.
such a huge
Mhm.
amount of people that are gonna be interested
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah, that, I was going to say that, well, first of all, I was going
we
to say, I'm sure you all read that article in the Saturday Herald about affordable housing, you know, which I thought was sort of timely. You know,
It's all anyone's
kind
talking
of
about.
what, you know, we're talking about. But at first, I know I thought, God, 30 units, holy, you know, but I think we're going to be surprised how quickly that is, they will,
They're gonna go like hotcakes.
they
I
will
hate
sell
to
and they
say
will
it.
be occupied.
I agree.
You know, and so I'm not necessarily going along with what David said about building them all at once. There is some logic in that.
Right.
I don't necessarily think we should do that, but I can see what you're saying.
If we could, you know, and that's why I threw out that idea of, you know, phasing it. You know, we've got two sides of the street we're working with here. You know, build one side of the street, get it done, then build the other side of the street. Thing is, or work from one end where it's already constructed towards the other end, because it's always good to work where the construction has already been done, so that you're not upsetting people with construction. Say if you started on the
Right.
corner, and then you're building the
Yeah.
houses in between, you know, building it all at once, there is a certain
Actually, that's what
sense to that.
That's
but-
what Nancy and I had recommended to the developers that came and went. You know, start with the one that's got, you know, 4 units and start there, but that just was
You know, and the
never,
thing is, if you started with 4 units, I think that it'll go quick, you know, all of a sudden you'll say, oh, we're gonna have to start another 4 units right now. It'll go that quickly. The other thing that I might throw out there for consideration is that, you know, I keep talking about our enterprise fund here, and I don't think that this should be the end of that discussion. That, you know, an enterprise fund could be something that we could replenish with the idea of purchasing more property at a different place doing the same thing. I mean, this is something the community really needs. Talking with my real estate buddy, part of the issue with developers is the lack of, their lack of capital. The lack of capital for local developers is an extreme problem. And if we want to have affordable housing and have any kind of direction on it, then we as a community, and not just Bayfield, but Durango, La Plata County, all need to be working in concert to address this issue. And that's where we need a regional housing authority with a tax base. And I keep saying that so that we have some kind of a revenue stream that allows that authority to purchase property and develop it. Or at least purchase property with the idea of getting some other entity to come in and develop it affordably. And like I said, this is part of a bigger discussion with the RHA and Southwest COG and Durango and La Plata counties.
So Kelly, trustee Kelly and I were at the RHA retreat today, and then we go again tomorrow afternoon. I honestly didn't see them go in that direction.
And that's unfortunate. That is really unfortunate, because if you don't have a revenue stream, then it's like, I hate to say it, pissing in the wind.
I have a question for, and you probably will get to the pros and cons. I notice that's on page 14. We haven't gotten that far yet, but yet I'll jump ahead. Under the cons where it says Regional Housing Alliance, is that, why was that under the cons?
It's not an authority. It's a
It's an association of people that don't have any, they can't.
authority to do anything.
We all make voluntary contributions to the alliance, whereas an authority would actually be getting a revenue stream from a tax base.
Okay, so it's a kind of a passive con. I mean, it's not.
So
like
the
they're actively out
alliance
there
has
working
been
against it.
inactive since 2017.
Okay,
I don't think another inactive, keep in mind, we're gonna spend another 4 hours with them tomorrow. But
better you than me. Yeah, okay, well, that, like say, it's not that they're actively working against anything, it's just that they're not doing anything.
that's correct.
And honestly, I'll sit here and say right now, if they don't switch over to being an authority with a tax base, with a revenue stream, it's basically a meeting a month where you're not getting anything done.
Was approached and stated on behalf of us. I believe Durango chimed in, the county chimed in and said if they can't get their act together and figure out how to develop and get some properties and some rooftops built, that we're gonna walk away and it's gonna have to be completely dissolved. Historically, we had this NPO and that NPO step in and provide for this, that, and the other, mostly low-income housing. Like we'd said, there'd been a huge focus on that, and then it just went away. And so we said, we're not gonna send our funds in that direction if they can't manage to do something about it. And the NPOs kind of seemed like they had it under control, was what I was getting from them. So at the end of the day, I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen, but we do have 4 more hours to discuss it tomorrow. And the goal tomorrow was to leave with policy, was to leave with action strategies and leave with policy.
Because the
that's the
authority,
intention.
the authority can bond. There's a lot of things that an authority can do, a real authority. They
Right.
are, as an alliance, it's basically, it's a meeting, I mean, we may as well have coffee and donuts.
Exactly. And this has been going on, you know, that's why 4 years of inactivity is basically where the RHA is at this point. Because there's no sense in meeting, because there's no money.
They have money in the bank, but
Well, money in the bank doesn't mean a revenue stream.
that's
You
correct.
can spend that money and it'll be gone. If you have a revenue stream, then you can establish a budget, then you can do things.
Unfortunately, it doesn't help us now.
Right.
No, it doesn't help us now, but this is one of those things, as a board, we can discuss and say, we can support a regional housing authority, and we would support the formation of a regional housing authority to the end that it could benefit the entire community.
But we need the entire county on board, which
Well,
I don't
this,
feel
and
like they
to,
are.
well, this is why discussions happen at a board level here, because we can designate somebody else to go sit in front of another board and say, please give this consideration.
I mean,
I've done it
Marcia was
before.
out- she
I've
was out
gone,
there.
sat in
Right.
front
I
of
mean,
the.
what's her take
Yeah,
on
I've
it?
gone and sat in front of the Durango City Council and said, would you please give consideration to rejoining the COG, which they did, and they have. I appreciate that, because that helps us. We all have goals. They're common goals. And just because we're 20 miles apart doesn't mean we should be not working together.
I'm hopeful that we can work through some of the issues with some of the other nonprofit housing organizations, understanding that we're not taking their role away. We're basically putting it under the umbrella of authority. However, I guess we'll see what happens. And I will certainly give you an update next Tuesday.
I'm glad you're having that discussion, I really am.
So are you kind of wanting us to, I mean, I kind of feel the pulse on the who.
So what I'm hearing, employed in the area, maybe. Deed restricted is what I'm hearing. We can go through all the water, sewer, taps, infrastructure, all that stuff, but I think we'll save that. I think at least we have enough basically to go on. And Nancy gave me some notes here that, that the platted townhomes, the way they're platted, will remain the way that they're platted. We're not changing anything.
I don't think we should.
So that's kind of what I'm hearing. Your town attorney Goldman is here. We have talked to a bond attorney regarding, financing and funding. I would like to get an estimate from SGM for the actual site development to get a good idea for engineering. Of course, it's going to take somebody to actually, construction to do that, but start there. So
There was
working on pieces.
someone, I think someone down at that end of the table brought up about rentals, and I think that's personally a real low priority for me.
Yeah,
I don't want us or anybody to get into the rental business.
I think it'd be too hard to manage, to be honest with you.
No, build it, yes, manage it, no.
It could be our next project.
I don't care if it's a rec center or
If we do
whatever.
rentals, it needs to be like an apartment building and we help to fund it and then we
Somebody
sell
else.
it
Yeah.
to somebody
Somebody
who is
and-
going to
manage it.
manage
and
it.
And I understand that there is a need for rentals in the community. I don't
Right.
think, I would not prefer, I would prefer that we do not fill that niche.
I
Yes,
think that, I
agree-
appreciate that.
And I do agree with that.
I do too.
That we do recognize that there absolutely is a need
yeah.
for 3-bedroom rentals. We talked about that today, that there absolutely is a need for that there are a lot of single parents out there with kids and they need, not just a 2-bedroom rental. But that's not our focus. And I think it's really good for us to recognize that and go down into a focus, because in some of the meetings I've been attending, you kind of you want to resolve all the problems and you want to help everyone. And if we recognize that that's not what we're trying to do with this one,
Right.
That's good. We
Can always be the
recognize
next
there's a need, but we do need to focus.
You know, your thoughts made me think of as well when we're doing the deed restrictions to make sure that they do our owner occupied deed restrictions. Because we don't want them to
No,
rent
Rent
them
it
out.
out.
Yeah, and that's something that I would like to see is what, I mean, I agree with deed restrictions, but I don't know what that entails. I don't know what they're going
Right.
to, so I
Yeah.
would be anxious to see what exactly we are deed restricting, you know, but I agree that we need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go so far as like, you know, to restrict them on everything that they do, but, you know, you want to make sure that they don't sell it
Right,
within a certain period of time, and you want to make sure they live in it.
yeah, it's not a second home.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And those, I think, are the only two real things that I would want to restrict on it, to be honest with you. I don't think that we need to restrict anything else. They can follow the HOA, they've got enough covenants and conditions and stuff like that, that they can follow those, and, you know, those are already in place, that we don't need to.
So there is funding, grant funding for deed restricted units as well. So this is, I kind of wanted to have this conversation to figure out where we wanted to go, because I didn't want to head down one route or another and find out that ship sunk and that's not the way you want to go, so.
Are there any, did I see that, does that funding have to be spent by 2024?
That's correct.
And it can be used on deed restricted? Or no?
It said affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Okay.
So I want to just talk a little
Awesome.
bit about the funding, because I think it's a pretty important process. The town's receiving about $670,000 from the ARP money. I know this may sound a little bit crazy right now, but I believe the best thing for you to do is work on your sewer plant with that funding. It will be easier to repay the money that you borrowed from the sewer fund with that money, and actually go out for bonding and other DOLA funds that are not tied to ARP regarding housing. And the reason is because I don't think that a 2024 timeline is good for this project, but I do believe it is a great project for their sewer plant.
How about the broadband project that we're doing? Can any of those funds be used
Yes.
to enhance the broadband?
Yes, and I think that that's going to take a bigger conversation with the county, La Plata County, regarding broadband. You know, I mean, they also receive some money. So anyway, I think that it would, just based on the meetings that I've had, and you saw the long information from the Treasury Department, and even my discussion with Patrick was, if it was water or sewer, I could make this conversation really easy. But if it's housing or broadband, it gets a little more difficult. So that would be my suggestion. I'm not making any, we did receive the first deposit the 18th of June, so we do have that money in the bank, the 50%, so the remaining will come next year.
Southwest COG was hopeful that all of the communities within our organization would be able to kick a little bit of that ARP money towards that middle mile project that our middle mile projects for broadband that we have going, because if we all kick a little bit of money towards that, now I don't know if we can or not, and this goes back to whether or not I think it's the Treasury Department's guidelines with respect to how that money gets spent, since it's federal money. Some of it you can leverage, some of it you can't. And we may not be able to leverage some of that money.
2024, that's, I'm looking at dates and determining.
We just have to figure out how to spend it within within those parameters.
And I do feel like it's a huge priority from the county right now to kick a little our way for that middle mile project. I can't.
Right, yeah,
Don't
and like I said,
quote me on that, but
Right,
that's kind of the
but,
discussions I'm hearing.
that would be, and that's, like I said, if we can throw a little bit of money towards that from this art money, that would be great. But I want to be certain that if we're throwing money towards it, that all of the other communities in the organization are doing likewise.
Madam Mayor, for the purposes of everyone in the room, would you please define the middle mile project? That was our broadband discussion from the last meeting. There's
Yeah, middle mile, basically your links from community to community. And right now, we don't have a redundant link from Durango to Cortez. We don't have a redundant link from Durango to Pagosa. There are links, but as we find out, they're easily cut.
Thank you. It's kind of the easiest way to get people connected at this point.
Okay, so I have, local, employed, no rentals, deed restricted, owner occupied. That's a really good start. We'll head that direction, at least, start putting things together more specific, on that.
And I know that you brought up about the enterprise fund or organization or board or whatever it is, and I would really like to know more about that. If you could tell us more about how that would work and how that could be structured. Did you give that to us already?
So in other words, this housing fund would be an enterprise. Yes, I will give you more information on that.
I mean, now that's just me. If there,
Yeah,
are
no,
you
and I
interested in
agree, I
doing
agree.
that?
We do need to kind of
Yeah.
see what a structure of that.
Now,
would
that
look
may not be by your next meeting at the
No, and
end
I-
of
I know,
No,
July.
that's fine.
like.
Because I think that what I want to make sure of is that we kind of manage this portion of it and determine if the enterprise, you do have 3 enterprise funds right now. You have sewer, water, and garbage.
Mhm.
Everything else is a government fund. And so I want to make sure that when we start going down this trail, that we're giving you good information of what an enterprise does on this, but not.
Right, and I think that David mentioned also that there would be a separate board, a board separate from this board that
I
would,
think you are the
Or
board
over.
for water and sewer.
no, I
Right.
understand that, but,
We would be, if we were sitting as an oversight board, we would be sitting independently. It's kind of like sitting as the Board of Adjustment or something like that. Or what did you sit as when you did the taxes, reconciliations, when people came in? Board of
Yeah.
Adjustment?
equalization, I think.
Equals, there you go,
Yeah.
because the you would sit as Board of Equalization.
Right.
And in that sense, you're not sitting as the Board of County
I
Commissioners.
would disagree. I think that if an enterprise, you actually are the board in charge of not only the enterprise, if you're looking for a completely different organization, you'd have to create a nonprofit.
Yeah, no.
No,
Okay,
no,
well,
not-
then, that's a good clarification, because I know what David was saying.
We're s-
Maybe I misunderstood what he was saying, but
Yeah, we're
it
still
sounded
doing
like there
the
was gonna be a
oversight when
separate.
it's all said and done. But it separates the monies, so to speak, since we don't,
Like-
we don't
Oh,
have.
that's
the-
fine,
Yeah. the
yeah.
Yeah, that, and
intermingling
that's,
of
we
the
do
gas,
that with
that's-
water,
it's-
yeah,
garbage,
that's
and
what
sewer.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
Currently
just
do.
basically separating that whole, operational entity out,
But we
away
would
from
be
the
the
government.
governing board
We'd,
on that.
we'd
We
still
don't
be
need
the
a-
oversight board, yes.
I misunderstood what you were
Yeah.
saying. Okay.
Okay. I don't know, I think that's it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit and fight the board. I do see a need for a rental unit in the mix, but
Yeah.
if that's not.
I
Yeah.
do too.
I see
Maybe-
the need, but it's
I know.
See the need, I just don't know if I wanna
The
delve
logistics of it.
into
I get it.
that piece of it. It's not that there's not a need.
I mean, I just brought it up, you talk about it, and. you
No,
know,
I feel like there is, say we get a new marshal in and he's gonna move his whole family here, but he just needs like 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months, and then they're gonna go buy a house. It's like, where,
So how about a transitional unit?
That's-
I would go
That-
with the transitional
That I'm
unit.
more okay with.
with the Charleston
Yeah.
idea. I would like to.
Can we go to
Char-
Gerald's?
I would
I'd
like
like
to
to
explore
be-
that option,
yeah.
I just, you know,
Well, specific for us though, or just narrow it into
It's
who
just-
can be
Right.
eligible for that.
I think that should be a very narrow field and not broad to just anybody, if that's something we're gonna go look at.
you can,
That's probably
Chief.
a good point.
Joe, did you have?
No, I was just gonna suggest, maybe at least one or two transition units.
Mhm.
Right.
I can foresee them being very important for like, Jeremy's,
Mhm.
employee that maybe come out of state.
Or
Holy
Katie,
cow,
for
we might
heaven's
be hiring a
sakes,
new-
you know?
A new town manager someday.
Or as a suggestion, because I just had this happen with one of my employees again. He was renting and the landlord basically booted him out because he's gonna sell the house. Well, now he needed something transitional while he looked for something else. Or it would have helped, cause usually in law enforcement, you require your employees to live within a certain amount of
Mm-hmm. Same with
response
fire.
time or miles, but he was having a very difficult time finding a rental that was available, or one that was affordable. I can tell you, I just learned the other day, La Plata County Sheriff's Department, they are now gonna allow their deputies to reside in Aztec.
In New
Farms,
Mexico,
New
yes.
Mexico, because they can't
Wow.
find a rental,
Wow.
So
or
I-
they can't find affordable housing,
Yeah.
but maybe just that little transition.
Just one of the units, one of the.
Yes, yeah, totally.
At least just get
That's
through
fine.
until they can find something.
Right.
No, and that's exactly why we need to
Yeah.
talk about this, because I just have a predilection to thinking, I don't want to have any part of it.
Yeah, but if
because
it's-
but I understand what
Like I
you're
said, if it's
saying.
somebody that Joe is willing to hire, I feel like it's okay to rent a unit to them.
That's why we're talking
you know?
about it. I mean, keep it in there. And
Yeah.
if that's what.
Just
the
one of
board-
them.
If that's what the board wants, that's,
I'd like to throw that in the mix to entertain, if everyone's okay with
I
it.
have no
Minimal-
problem with
minimal.
that. I have a problem with just regular rentals.
Okay,
Yes.
this will be a transitional situation. The
No,
Charleston,
I think that makes sense.
okay.
Gotta do the Charleston.
Glad I spoke up, because I was gonna let that go, but I didn't feel the vibe. I didn't feel the vibe.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
no, it's
good.
Katie, are we
Talk about it.
talking at our next meeting that's not this work session about how we want to spend the money that we're getting in the two chunks? Because I'm looking at our capital improvement goals and our operations goals of other things that we wanted to do. Because there was the park conceptual plan that was in there. I mean, we had talked about broadband, like there's items in here that we're not really touching on that maybe this funding could go towards, and this is something.
Not
That's the
towards
problem
parks.
is
Yeah,
It
it's
can't go to
pretty.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
it's
restricted.
Pretty
Okay.
restricted, and it has to be something that was affected by COVID or water and sewer. Patrick kept saying
Right.
water or sewer. Just ask for water sewer projects.
So it would be,
Yeah, well, that's where I was trying to figure out where
Yeah.
water and sewer just came from.
Right.
It would just be an item.
It's from the treasury, and it's
Okay.
the
I was like, I missed
easiest
that
two
part of the meeting.
paragraphs to read.
yeah.
Okay.
And your
Okay.
town attorney, can give you some, additional input. But you actually have some budget seasons that are starting in July. This will maybe a longer Monday night.
Yeah.
In the end of July. So we will be talking about the art money.
Okay.
We will be talking about, your, all the fun things we talk about at budget season. So
Okay, perfect. That's where thank you. You answered my question. I just didn't know when that part comes up because I was.
About twice a month for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
or 3.
So is that, everyone's good with those steps in the who? Okay.
Oh, pros and cons. So the pros, what was it, 203 units at 80% AMI, or we're short. To increase affordable workforce housing, that would be the pro. Right now, federal and state funding for housing is available now. Not only did we receive our art funding, but the Department of Local Affairs has a multitude of programs that most of it will come through housing, and it's coming through housing in different buckets, if you'd like to call it that, including buckets to our nonprofits, Homes Fund and Housing Solutions as well. It increased incentives for town of Bayfield employees, attract qualified employees and support other employers in the area. So in other words, if you could, if you could say that there's housing here, I remember even when I came here, it was like, well, where am I going to live?
Well, and then last month, where are you gonna live?
Yeah, I've had a lot of that. Where am I going to live? So basically looking even at our assistant public works director, where we do want somebody qualified. We don't want Durango to steal them right off the bat or find another community that has housing. Several partners in La Plata County are willing to partner, so we do have some of that. The potential rural housing authority is a potential, and like I said, we can have that argument, but I really think that's something we'll kind of see what happens the next couple. And tomorrow's not going to be the end of it, so I have a feeling that it's still got to figure out what they're going to do. So. The cons, and of course you can write your own pros in there if you'd like. The cons, the town does not have the capacity at this time to manage housing, so we would have to go to our partners and look for that assistance. A local government is in the business of providing housing. We talk about free market. If the free market was there, why haven't they provided housing? The other thing is that there are grants available, incentives to actually look at our land use code and add things that would increase the incentives for housing as well. So that could be something that we work on. And of course, there are quite a few things that Nancy and I have found in our land use code that could use some real updates. So. Concerns with the neighborhood about an undesirable development. That certainly is a con. The sewer fund is intended to provide sewer service, not housing. Currently, right now, that's where the funding came from. The long-term impacts to the free market. Today, if you've been in the Durango area, Bayfield area, or Western Colorado, it's been up and down based on oil and gas, based on coal, based on everything. We are after a COVID that I don't think any economists could ever have predicted or figured out what to do next. Who knows what will happen as a result of something else that comes along. And the Rural Housing Alliance. The Rural Housing Alliance is a con, in my opinion, and unless they actually start acting like authority.
In more than one sense of the word, right?
Well, I'm just stating that there are some steps you have to take as an authority. So, and I also provided just one of the articles. I had numerous articles that Nancy had sent regarding the impacts of a housing, workforce housing to the community. I don't know if you'd like to hear more from Nancy, but she's certainly been in this arena for a while, so. Go for it.
I don't want to give a speech here. The article I put in there, I think, covers things pretty well. There's been a lot of research on affordable housing next to fair market housing, because you hear it every time. You'll adversely affect my property values. These studies, you can say whether or not they're applicable, but this, and this was like the third article that came up when Katie asked me. She gave me like 10 minutes to send you some articles, so I had to speed read through here. But this one does a nice summary. I think it's from the John D. and Catherine T. McCarthy Foundation. Pretty unbiased. I gave her one from Trulio too, and she didn't put in here, which I liked because Trulio doesn't have a dog in that fight. It's like just what's happening, and again, it sometimes shows positive increase on property values. A study in Denver showed that. It's not a lot of these are small town studies, but I wasn't surprised at all to find this when she asked me to do it, because my understanding has always been that vacant land and the uncertainty of what will happen is more of a downer on your property values than having brand new housing on a property. We're not talking about projects or very low income housing. This is gonna be housing for people that are already here or that are at this table, or will be at this table. So, you know, having a police officer next door is never usually seen as a downer on your property values, or a teacher. I think the other thing to reassure neighbors is that we really can't change the plan without their permission. We've gone to the attorney on that. So it was a downer it was hard for the private developers to be locked into that plan, and they had all sorts of different ideas and wanted to change it. To be able to change it, we had to get sign-offs from all of those existing lot owners before you could let them change it. I think that still probably applies, which is somewhat unfortunate because you can make something better, you know. But if we come up with a better plan. So anyway, I don't think that there's any concern about impact on property values, although, I mean, I shouldn't say that. There'll be concern, but I don't feel like it's something that is a valid statistical concern throughout the nation right now.
I live next to Fox Farm. I don't think it's a concern that we should even give any consideration to. Fox Farm is an asset to our community when you look at it in the final analysis, and continues to be so because you have a whole bunch of units there that are owner occupied, and every one of those people are somehow or another engaged in our community, so.
Well, and like you said, there's an HOA, there's covenants, there's rules for the neighborhood already, so it's not like we're changing any of that.
No, that's right, absolutely.
There should be something in the deed restrictions for if the person who purchased the home is unable to make their payments. And what we do with the property, or where the property goes from there.
Like if we have like a fail-safe or something. for
Right,
them.
exactly,
Right
like
of
say for
refusal.
example,
Right
it
of
goes,
refusal.
yeah, it goes back into that same type of housing pool, or, you know, something where, you know, it's still workforce housing if somebody lost their job or they couldn't afford to make their payments or they defaulted. Yeah.
And they actually restore the property. They're renovating another unit out there right now. So, you know, that's something to consider.
Yeah, I think we've got good models to pick up on all of these, and it may be picking and choosing from Habitat and the Alliance, not the Alliance, the Homespun. Because they do down payment assistance that has to get paid back.
Yeah.
And they've got models for that, so I think we could probably craft something.
Okay, so we have another one of these, July 26th.
Oh, yeah.
Mark your
And
calendars.
it will be partly budget. We'll probably do housing first
will not be
and
here.
budget. My guess, it may be a longer meeting just because that will be our first, our capital visions for 2022. Should I consider getting dinner?
Hooray.
Probably.
Josh wanted donuts.
At least pastry,
Coffee and donuts?
At least baked, yeah.
baked goods.
So we'll just make sure it's, we'll try to start at 6:30.
And then, our comments and questions from the public,
Do we have any cards?
and you don't have to turn them in today, you can bring them by at any time.
Or email us.
Yep. Or email, yes. Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns? Do you have anything to add?
Questions?
Michael, anything?
been taking notes, and yeah, I think this has really been a good conversation. There's been some great questions with regards to funding and financing, and of course, down the road, we can talk about that as we hone in on what it is the town really envisions here.
Okay, anybody from the team have anything to add, or?
I'd just like to say my daughter now lives in her second workforce housing unit in San Miguel County, and it's phenomenal. She would not have the career or the housing security that she does without it. And I think that Bayfield being a leader in this area is really something. So it's hard to hear Telluride and Breckenridge when we talk about Bayfield, but, and their funding mechanism was a real estate transfer tax, which was pre-Tabor.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the fact that she went from a condo that she bought for $250, that she was approved to sell for $257, and then went to a house for $480, that would have been $1.2 million on the open market. And so seeing that in action, and San Miguel County has 8,000 residences that are either workforce housing rental or ownership. The town of Mountain Village is now taking apartments that they own and selling them to a private contractor who only manages workforce housing rentals for towns. So there's some stuff right around the corner from us. Yes, they have more money. Oprah pays her 3% when she buys and sells, but the examples still stand. You just have to move decimal points. So I'm a huge fan of workforce housing.
Thanks, Beth.
All right, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. It's 8:03.
I didn't appreciate that.